Okay, the next lesson in this unit is solving equations. We're going to start with one-step equations. So what I'm going to do is walk you through some examples of one-step equations. Please listen and watch the entire video and write down the examples and any notes. So get out your notebook and let's get started. Alright, so our topic is solving one-step equations. We're looking for a solution to the equation. A solution to an equation is a value or number, that when substituted in an equation in place of a variable makes the equation true. So we're looking for a value that makes the equation true. So here are some examples. We're going to solve each equation and then we're going to check the solution on the calculator. Alright, we have p plus 5 equals negative 10. So we're looking for a number that when added to 5 would give us a negative 10. And the way that we do this is we're going to do inverse operations. So the first thing you want to look at is you want to look at inverse operation. What operation is being performed? Here we have addition. We're going to do the opposite of addition. So you look at the side with the variable, we have plus 5. So in order to solve this, we're going to subtract 5 or add a negative 5. Subtracting 5 and adding a negative 5 are the same. So you must write the equation and you must show your work. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides because our goal is to get the variable, the p, all alone by itself on one side of the equation. So when I add 5 plus a negative 5, that makes 0, so I'm left with p alone on the left. And now I'm adding a negative 10 to a negative 5. Negative 10 plus negative 5 makes negative 15. So my answer is negative 15, but let us check. So we're going to substitute the p with negative 15 plus a positive 5 to double check. Does that equal a negative 10? And you can check that with your calculator. And yes, negative 10, you would get a negative 10 on the left. So that checks. All right, let's do the one on the right. Again, we're going to do inverse operations to both sides of the equation. And we're solving for r. So write this problem down. If you look on the right, you're subtracting 2.6 from r. So in order to solve this, we're going to do the opposite of subtracting 2.6, and we're going to add 2.6 to both sides. So I'm adding 2.6 to both sides of the equation. When I add 2.6 to the right side, they cancel out, so I'm left with an r by itself. Bring down your equal sign. And now I'm adding a negative 7.5 plus a positive 2.6. You have to subtract and take the sign of the bigger number. So I'm going to subtract. I'll get 15 minus 6 is 9. And that becomes a 6. So 6 minus 2 is 4. And bring down my decimal. And the larger number was negative, so my answer should be negative 4.9. So I'm going to double check. I write negative 7.5 is equal to r. R I said is negative 4.9 minus 2.6. So if we check that on our calculator, we're going to do keep, change on the right. So keep that, change that to adding, change that to a negative. So when I add that together, I should get negative 7.5 on both sides. So if you do that, you get a check mark, and so it's true. Alright, so number 3 is a little bit different. You notice that you have addition, but you're adding a negative. And what I want to do is I want to solve for m, so I want to get m alone. So I need to get rid of this negative 34. I need to zero that out. So what can I do to zero the negative 34 out? Well, I can add a positive 34 to that. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to do a positive 34. So if I add a positive 34 to a negative 34, I'm canceling that out so that I get m alone. Then I do the same thing to the other side. I have a negative 21 and a positive 34, a positive plus a negative, so I subtract the numbers, and I get 4 minus 1 is 3, 3 minus 2 is 1, and the biggest number was positive, so I'm going to put a positive sign there. Now I'm going to check. So I put a positive 13 plus a negative 34 to substitute in, and I do indeed, if you check it on the calculator, you get a negative 21. All right, the next problem, if you write this down, you see that you have a subtracting a negative. What you want to do before you work this problem is you want to go ahead and do keep, change so that you have your adding. So this becomes r plus 8. So now you have r plus 8 is equal to a negative 14. So now you want to cancel out the 8. So what is the opposite of adding 8? It's subtracting 8. So if I subtract 8 from both sides, sorry this is kind of messy. So the 8's cancel, I end up with r is equal to a negative 14 plus a negative 8. Negative 14 plus a negative 8. They're both negative, so you get a negative 22. So we want to check it and make sure we have the right answer, so I put a negative 22. I do plus 8. I'm just going to go ahead and keep that like I rewrote it there. And that equals negative 14. So if I add these two together, that means I have to subtract and take the sign of the bigger. So the problem does check out. Okay, let's go on to the next problem. All right, in these problems, I'm going to write them down. You have a negative 5 times t equals 60. You're going to do the inverse operation of multiplying. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. And you want to get this t alone by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by the number that's multiplied by the t. That's the negative 5. So I divide by a negative 5 on the left. A negative 5 divided by a negative 5, they cancel out because that becomes positive 1. Now you have t. 60 divided by a negative 5 gives me a negative 12. Now I want to double check. So I substitute. I have a negative 5 times a negative 12. Does that equal 60? Yes, a negative times a negative makes a positive 60, so the problem checks. All right, let's do the next one. We have 2.3 times n equals 115. So we have to divide both sides by the number that is being multiplied because the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm undoing the multiplication by dividing. When I divide 2.3 by 2.3, I get 1. So now I have 1n right here, and I don't write the 1. And then I need to divide 115 by 2.3. So you can do that here. We're going to divide that by 2.3. I'll pause this. All right, so you should get 50 when you divide. So now we're going to double check. 2.3 times 50, does that equal 115? So if I multiply that on my calculator, I do get 115 is equal to 115, so the problem checks out. All right, so let's do, I think we have 3 more. We're going to do 9 problems. Okay, so now I have a division problem. Anytime you have a fraction, you have division. So I have a number r that's being divided by a negative 4 to give me 15. So I'm going to do the opposite of dividing, and the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I'm going to multiply both sides of this equation by this number here. Instead of dividing it, I'm going to multiply. So if I do negative 4 times r over negative 4, and I do the same thing on the right, I have to multiply by a negative 4. What happens is on the left is the negative 4's cancel out, because when I cross cancel I get 1. So now I have an r, and now I have to do 15 times a negative 4, and that's going to be a negative 60. Now I have to double check to see if I have the right answer, so I put the negative 60 on top where the r is, divide that by a negative 4, and I get a positive 15. So that does check. So now I have the right answer. Let's do 2 more. All right, so this one is very special. I have a fraction being multiplied by b. I need to get rid of this fraction. I don't want this fraction. I need to get rid of it. So I need to, the way you can get rid of a fraction is you can multiply by the reciprocal, because if I multiply 2/3 times 3 over 2, the 3's cancel, the 2's cancel, and I get 1. So anytime you have a fraction, you want to multiply by 3/2. So I'm going to multiply 3/2 times 2/3, bring down the b, and then I have to do the same thing to the right. So I have to do 12 times the reciprocal, which was 3/2. All right, these cancel out, so b now is by itself, which is what I want. And now I can add a 1 here, and I can multiply. So I could get 36 over 2, or I can cross-reduce if I want, and I can make this a 1 and make this a 6. So my answer is going to be 18. I can double-check this by taking 2/3, multiply it by what I got as my answer, 18. Does that give me 12? I can add a 1 there. I can cross-reduce, and 2 times 6 is 12. So yes, this checks. All right, one more. All right, for the last problem, you have 16 is equal to -4/3 x. I just taught you that, excuse me, I just taught you that if you multiply by the reciprocal of 4/3, it will clear that fraction out. But this is also a negative, so if you have a negative, you have to multiply by a negative because you need a positive. So I'm going to multiply both sides of this by a -3/4. So -3/4 times the 16 here is equal to, and now I'm going to do a -3/4 times -4/3, and then I have an x. So now I'm going to work the problem. I'm going to cross-reduce. I get a 1 and I get a 4. A negative times a positive makes a -12. And then over here, a negative times a negative makes a positive, and the 3's cancel and the 4's cancel. So now I have an x by itself, which was my goal. So my answer is -12, but I must check it. So I have a 16 is equal to -4/3 times -12. So I'll put a 1 there. I'll cross cancel. And 4 times 4. A negative times a negative makes a positive, so 16 equals 16, and it checks. All right, so that's the lesson for today. Your goal now is to write a WISC. Remember, W stands for what, when did you watch and where. S stands for summarize what you learned today, some different strategies and what you're trying to do to solve equations. And then a Q would be questions. What do you not understand from the video? Okay? All right, thanks for watching.